The three most important aspects of Silenzio are probably, first of all, the politics of representation in traditional performing arts. That's one of the reasons why we chose opera. I have a background in ballet, a ballet education, so it was close to opera, but opera isn't as close to home as ballet. That's why I chose opera. And then the second aspect I would say is the voice. I'm very interested in kind of the corporality of the voice, first of all, like using the voice in a choreographic sense as a choreographic practice, first of all, and then second of all, also like kind of like the political aspects of the voice. So how, you know, the voice in an auditory sense translate to a voice in a symbolic sense, how being present with your voice translates into being present as a body, being seen. And then the third aspect I'd say is abjection. So we, I mean, that was kind of very much the starting point of the show, to thread abjection into like a performative convention that is completely devoid of the abject. So in opera, let's say there's a lot of death, there are a lot of women, it always centers around the women, which you know, are considered very very bodily beings, but then on the other hand, like the corporality of women is very kind of clean in opera, but also in other performing arts, and also, yeah, the death thing. Like there's a lot of death, but it's very romantic death. There's never any like gore in the death. So that's why I thought like abjection, putting it where it's never seen, seemed important to me, and it carries that feminist aspect. There isn't like really one reason why opera. First of all, because I just find it really beautiful. I mean, I love the practice. During some project that I had, some dance project that I had as a dancer, we worked with an opera singer, and she kind of introduced us a little bit to the practice of opera singing, and I just thought that it's such a somatic practice, and I got very interested in it. But then opera as a performance for me is really interesting because it's a theatrical form that has even though it's kind of, people try to make it more contemporary nowadays, but like the librettos, they're very, they can't change because they're very thread into the musical composition. So even though the staging could be a little bit more modern, the stories, they're still like very 19th century. So like all the patriarchy and all the colonialism and all that violence, it's carried through the librettos of opera. So for me, that's very interesting, and it's still something that functions. And I think that like it kind of opera and ballet, it kind of, there's still a residue of these theatrical forms in theater and dance today. So I kind of wanted to look into that, to the kind of archaeology of theater and dance. In opera, everything's very aestheticized. Women are very aestheticized. Women also, they have a voice in an auditory sense, but they do not have a voice in a symbolic sense at all. Like women's voices, they're always, you know, the whole opera is made around the soprano. But on the other hand, like no women composed operas or created the stories for operas. It was all men, so they just carry the voice in an auditory sense. The rest is done by men, you know? So in one sense, there's access for women. On the other hand, there's a complete lack of access. So I thought like that duality is very interesting in opera. Silenzio was made after a piece I did that focused on the face, and I started a practice face choreography, and in Silenzio, the starting point was very much that as well. This face choreography, and we were very interested in not only the choreography used in opera, let's say, this like overly dramatic, melodramatic movements in opera. This interested us a lot as well, and like treating it really seriously, like taking it as very serious choreographic material, but also the choreography or the face choreography or the kind of performativity of opera divas, even when they're not performing on stage, when they're like kind of performing being themselves on stage, when they're bowing, when they're, you know, at galas, for example, when they're singing, when they're thanking the audience or thanking the orchestra and stuff like that. I found it very interesting that, you know, they're always performing. They have to perform themselves. Like the status of the diva is something that has to be kind of performed all the time to support itself. So that was kind of the starting point. And, you know, we knew that we wanted certain things like this abjection. We knew that we wanted death, the performance of death, and death over and over and over and over and over again. And also we were interested in the possibility of having a subjective position of like kind of owning this kind of masochistic position that women have in operas. So I was interested in how, like, you know, we could take over that, how we could take ownership of this masochism, of this like being the the victim, but like how we could actually have power in performing the victim. I chose the title Silenzio with an exclamation mark at the end to kind of, to represent this paradox, I'd say, that on the one hand, there's this silencing of the female voice. On the other hand, in an auditory sense, there's a praising of the female voice. So I thought that the title kind of carries that.